Hello everyone, welcome to today's RoadEng webinar. We will be focusing on walls and retaining structures. My name is Shadia Serrano and I will be your host today. With me is our resident webinar expert, Matthew Dickey. This webinar is going to focus on demonstrating how to include walls and retaining structures in your RoadEng project. We will demonstrate several examples from the eLibrary in the location module. 5 of these examples from the eLibrary are a rural road with a guardrail, a kit in rock fill, rural road with a cut wall, rural road with blocks. Oh, these are a lot of R's for us Spanish speakers. And a new template component for a GRS wall. This is not yet in the eLibrary, but you're getting the preview for it today. Matt will be discussing all these walls and barriers components using a road design project that is already set up in the location module. If you need more information on how he got to this point, we will include some links in the video description on YouTube, or you can join us live on December 15 for a webinar on road design with LiDAR data. Quick housekeeping items here before we get started. For those of you in the live version of the webinar, you are muted, but you're encouraged to engage with us and ask questions. You can do so by selecting the question pane in the desktop app or the question mark in the web browser version. We keep our question askers anonymous, so don't be afraid to ask a question. For those of you watching off our YouTube channel, don't forget to hit the like button. And you can drop the questions in the comment section below. And with this brief presentation, I'm going to pass it to Matt. Welcome, Matt, and all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Shadia. Yeah, so as Shadia mentioned, we're going to start out with an existing road alignment and location, and we're going to walk through the steps to get to something similar to this. So I've got a few different wall types going on here. One's not really a wall, but our stacked rock fill. So this is what we're looking to get to. So I'm going to just minimize this, and this is our project that we're starting with. So if we have any folks that aren't familiar with the ins and outs of getting to this point, it's pretty straightforward. I'm using a LiDAR data set, so I've brought in my LiDAR data, and into terrain, I've modeled that as a tin. I've saved that file. I've opened up location, and I've clicked in an alignment, and I've added curves. Now the cross-section geometry that I'm using here to start is our default rural road cross-section geometry. And what I do throughout this, I'm going to use this as kind of my basis for what I'm working with, but I'm going to add those wall components on and modify it to suit what I'm looking to do. So just a little bit of background on our fictional project here. We have an existing road that has some tight corners in it that we want to realign, and we want to minimize our road footprint as much as possible. There's some high value ecological features around here, so we don't want hill slopes going on forever, and we want to minimize our cut slopes, but it also gets a fair bit of traffic, so we want to avoid these tight corners and keep things safe for folks. So with this, we have our first section that we're going to deal with is our cut slope area here. So we're going to add in a cut retaining wall. So it'll be the pretty straightforward example. We've got this draw that we're going through, and we could absolutely add a wall in here, but in this case, we're going to go with a stacked rock fill. So it's still allowing us to fill material steeper than we could with the native material. And it's also going to have some erosion resistance if we have any issues with the creek. And then out here we have this other section where we're going to go with a wall. And for this, we'll go with either GRS or some form of block wall. So that's a quick overview. Now, the steps that we're going to take here is going to be largely focused on working with our template editor and applying those templates, and maybe even using some overrides in a few sections. So when I say templates, I'm referring to our cross-section geometry. So I'm going to click our template editor up here. So I can see right now I've got the default templates that come with the software when you install it. And I've got my rural road applied. And if we just expand this, we can see that we've got a rural component, a ditch component, and a slope component. We have different components for left and right. The template itself doesn't have a lot of parameters that we can adjust, but if we go into one of these components, we can see we have a lot more flexibility to change these numbers and values to get the geometry we're looking for. And I go through that here, but we're going to do a lot of clicking around in other examples, so I won't just do it to do it. With these components that come with these default templates, they're great in a lot of situations, but some situations, they aren't going to be representative of what you'd like. So no matter how much we change our slope component, it's not going to add a structure for that fill slope. So to get around that, we're going to bring in components that are already created. We just have to change the parameters to make them do what we'd like. I'm going to go onto the eLibrary here. And we can see our template components are organized into a series of folders. And the components that I'm looking for today are from the slopes component folder and the walls and barriers folder. So I've got that. Now, just right off the bat, before I actually account for any kind of retaining structure, I'm going to add in a barrier just because we've got a large drop on the right side of our road the whole way through this design. So for that, I'm going to go into my walls and barriers. And I've got something called guardrail, so that's pretty descriptive of what I'd like. I can see we've got a little preview of what it looks like. So I'm going to use that in my current alignment. So I'm going to come up here, apply it to my current template, and I'm going to paste. I'm going to paste it as new right. And there we are. Now with this, we can see that I've placed it at the bottom of my list. And with that, it's being placed on top of this roadway with an embedment depth. Now if I shift this up to the top, if I place that first, it doesn't know where the road surface actually is yet because these components get built after. So in this case, we want that to be inserted after the other components. Now, if we want to change these parameters, we absolutely can. We've got a Boolean switch here that if we toggle that on and off, we can just remove that template without actually removing the component. And I've got my offset. I'm happy with the offset in this case. I've got my post thickness, post height of 1, and then I've got a post depth embedded in the ground, 0.75. My rail thickness, rail depth, and an offset. Now I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to hit OK. And we could keep going and we could build out all of these components without hitting OK and jumping back and forth. Now, of course, my motive here is to show folks how things work. So I'm going to just come in and out of this to talk about how things behave a little bit. So if I hit OK, since I'm modifying my default rural component, that gets applied throughout my design. And the reason that gets applied throughout my design is because that template that I have applied is assigned by range, and it goes right from the start of my road to the end of my road. So as we get going here and we want to add different templates to different sections of road, we're going to use the assign by range to make those assignments. But here we are, and we can see our rail. So let's jump back into templates and let's build something new. And the first thing that I'd like to tackle is this big cut slope here. So just so we can see our cross section at that location, I'm going to look down here. I can see my station is around, station 100 looks pretty representative. So I'm going to click that flag and I'm going to just jump to that station so I can see what's going on here as I make my edits. Now I could build a new template, which is a collection of components out from scratch, and there wouldn't be any problems with that. But in this case, where I want my cross-section geometry to be very similar to this one that I'm starting with, just with a wall in there, I'm going to hit copy. I'm going to hit paste as new, and we've got a duplicate of it. Now in this one, I'm not going to worry about the barrier, so I'm going to remove that. And I'm going to give this a unique name so I can keep track of what's what. So I'm going to call this rural with that wall. And I'll hit OK. So then I want to apply this component that is going to represent my wall. So I'm going to go into my walls and barriers. So if I'm looking for a wall component, my walls and barriers folder is a pretty good place to start. And I can go through here and I can just do a few quick clicks to see what we have going on. I want something that looks like this. I'm not going to really worry about the dimensions at this point, but I'm going to just see if it's kind of representative of the shape of what I'm looking for. And this is. I'm going to hit copy. I'm going to paste this in as left. And we can see, well, that looks reasonable. And if we had pasted this in at the very start, it's going to be at my center line. So this component has a connection based off the outside of any surface. So I want it to be at the outside of my road edge. So we'll shift it down to be below the roads. Next, let's change our dimensions. So I'm content with the wall thickness of 0.3. Wall height is going to be tall in this case. Let's go with 12. And this wall fill factor, we can see down here, all of these parameters. If we highlight the ones we want to change, there's a description here. So this is going to control this. It also highlights it in magenta, how much of a bench we have behind the wall. So I'm going to set that to be 0.5. And we can see here I've got backfill applied. So this cut slope that we're going to place here, it only has to be it's a temporary cut. So I can cut it quite steep without worrying about long-term stability. And let's do that. So I'm going to go with that. We'll hit OK. Now I've got that component figured out, but there's a few things here that I'd like to change. So first, I probably don't need a ditch on the top of my cut slope. It may be that I do. There might be a reason for that, but I don't in this case. So I'll remove that component. And then down here, I've got my sub-base and base course material extending down, and my wall is at the foot of that. So let's steepen that up. So I'll go into this roadway component. I still want to have my shoulder, so I'll leave that shoulder as the width that it was. But let's go in here and say sub-base fill slope. See, that's being highlighted. We'll set that as vertical, and we'll go with our base fill slope, and we'll set that as vertical as well. So there, we're hugging the road. And that's great. Now another thing that is optional, and in this case doesn't really make a lot of benefits, but it may be that I had a long project and I might want to flip back and forth from side to side with this template. So rather than having a template with a wall on the left, a wall on the right, and a wall both, let's just make this symmetrical, and we can apply it as a left or right component as needed, or left or right template as needed. So I'm just copying these, pasting them in, and we're set. And once again, I'm going to remove that ditch. So this looks funny, but we're not going to apply it in a fill situation like that. So that template that we've created, it isn't assigned anywhere in this. So let's figure out where we want to put that. So let's go back here, and that's pretty reasonable. We can probably scale that. Let's start at 40. Let's end. Let's go back just a little bit. Somewhere between 125 and 130. I'm going to go into assign by range. I'm going to go into my templates. I want to just apply this template on the left, and we've called it rural with cut wall, and we will apply that from 40 to, let's say, 127.5, halfway in between. So we've got that. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. And there we are. We've got a wall. I will just mention here, when I set this file up, one of the things that I did do was I went through and I've added in my different layers that I'm going to be using for the different surfaces of the templates that I have. So it's easy to do. It's just no one wants to watch me click add each time that I add something in there. And that's been covered and will be covered in other webinars and videos as well. So we've got our cut slope taken care of. Let's continue along here. So we've got this stream crossing. And here I said I wanted to use a rock fill. So it allows us to fill steeper and also acts as armor, and it's reasonably economical compared to building a wall. So let's go in here. I can get to my template editor another way. So I can click this. And once again, I want to use this as my basis. I'll hit copy. I'll hit paste as new. I'll call it rural with rock fill. And that rock fill lives in my slopes components. So I'll come down here. I'll hit copy. I'll come in here. I'll hit paste as new. And that's dropped in on the left-hand side. Now with this, if we were to read this description, it's telling me to add before other components. So I'll shift that up to the top. And here we can see that I've got a few things going on. I've got it going right up to my surface, and I want it to be under my subbase, and I want it to be offset differently. So I'll open this up. I'm going to go with my road subgrade width. I'll set it to 7.2. And I'm going to go with a vertical offset. I'm going to apply that in my connection here. Now There we are. And then with this, I'm happy with my fill thickness. I'm happy with my key in depth. But one of the things I want to get from this is a steeper fill slope. So let's change that to 1:1. Once again, if I'm applying this, I don't want a ditch on that side. We'll get rid of that. I'll get rid of this ditch as well, and I'm going to copy, paste as new right. So there we are. So that's called that. We'll come in here, we'll hit OK. And we can say, well, this one's going to be applied on the right. And let's apply that from station, say 130. I'm just looking at my stationing here. 130, and let's go out to 250-ish. We'll choose what we'd like. So rural with rock fill. We'll hit OK. And there we are. We can see we've shortened up that fill slope quite a bit by having the lesser angle. And we're ready to move along to our next one. So just, actually, this little sliver here, I'm going to use that rock fill at the end just to take care of it, because that bugs me just seeing it. Even if we ignored it, it bugs me. Let's go 370. We'll start that, and then by leaving this as ... that goes to the end, whatever the station is. So I don't have to know that that ends at a specific number. There we are. And let's take care of this section here next. So to start, I'm going to look at using a either our gabion basket or block template. We'll use kind of as a gravity wall with a batter on it. But then we'll switch what we use there and use that new template that we showed in the introduction. So templates, we use that as our basis again. We'll come in here, we'll hit paste as new, and Earl with block wall. Actually, I can type these out. So once again, go up to my walls component. I've got gabion fill component here. Let's say copy. We're going to paste this in. And let's put that on the outside like we have it. And we'll expand this. So let's go with block width. I'm going to set my block width to be 0.75. Block height of 0.75. Block offset, I'm going to set that at 0. But I'm going to tilt my blocks at 5%. So we've got that. I'm happy with that. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. And I'm going to figure out, kind of split hairs here a little bit. I want to start that template right there. So 277 at 327. Sign by range, right, 277 to 327. And there we are. Now with this, we can see that, I've done something funny to make it render funny, but we can also see that the profile of that is kind of following my road. So that's where that other template that we're going to use comes into really shine, and it's going to let us have the footing set at either a fixed elevation or increments of our block height, so it'll step and keep those rows of blocks or face for compaction at a level. So we'll come back in here and let's grab that one again. Actually, let's just grab this one, copy, paste as new. We'll go GRS. And I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to merge in this template that I've saved locally. So by merging in rather than open, I can keep everything that's already there. And it lets me select the one I want, and there we are. I guess with this, I've got it already in place. But if it was just the template, I'd take that and I'd go in here and I'd paste. So paste as new, right? And we'll flip this up. We'll look at what we have going on here. So the parameters with this one, I can set the toe elevation, or I can tell it whether that's fixed elevation or if it's just setting the datum for how the increments that my little steps, if we look at this from a longitudinal standpoint, where they appear. So I'll leave that as an unfixed toe. But if we look at this, I've got my minimum wall embedment depth set at 1 meter. So it has to go down to be at least 1 meter less than the strip topo surface. I've got my block dimension set here, or whoops, set here. I've got an offset, so it's just being set down from my center line. Same offset that I use for the rock fill for horizontal. Face height, face width, face offset for those little steps. Got my leveling course. I've got the slope for my critical fill. And I've got my width for my bench at the bottom. Those are the main parameters here. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. And I'm going to apply that template in place of this one. So we have that. Now, a few things that are going on here. One, I'm going to just increase how frequently we're creating cross-sections through this portion, just so I can see those steps a little clearer rather than these long-ish interpolations. Oops, and let's just do it from auto-generate report points in 0.5 meter intervals from 277 to 327. So there we go. We can see those steps are doing what we'd like. And just so I can see what's happening at the bottom here, I'm going to add in my template codes for the leveling course. So I can see that's jumping up and down at the bottom there. So here I'm going to say, well, let's just keep it all at that elevation of 236. So I'm going to modify my template to do that. So we've got the elevation already set, but we'll go in here and we'll set that to elevation to be fixed. So now it goes out and I'm cutting for no reason. So here, to get around that, if I want to allow this to step up on its way out of having this wall, well, I can use an override to do that. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say, let's apply that at okay, 318. So at 318.1, I'm going to set that to 0, and then I'll keep it at 0, so it's no longer fixed at the toe from there to the end. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. And now that's stepping up for me, and I'm not carrying a bunch of extra cut for no reason. So if we were to continue this through, and I'll just really quickly touch on it, we could go through and we could create our documentation really quick for this project that we've designed. Go over to our multi-plot editor. Set our page size to be whatever we'd like. Read in our plan over profile. And we could change our sizes accordingly, put the scale so we're actually using the document. And then the bigger thing here will be our cross sections. So, and of course here we change those scales so we're getting what we want on each page. And with that, that's the bulk of what I wanted to focus on. Yeah, it's largely walls. Our software is largely just a function of making use of the template editor, use of the available components, and applying them. And then in certain situations, there is other functions where you may want to use an override or whatnot. So with that,
Great.
open it up for some questions.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, we do have some questions. The first one is, can you show how to change the fabric layers in the GRS?
Sure. So I guess with that, the template for this is yes, in development. It'll hopefully be out in the next few days in the eLibrary, but it's subject to a bit of change. But right now it is, if we go in here, oops. We've got our parameters. So I'm going to scroll down here and we've got our tieback vertical spacing. So use the term tieback because text style could be grid, could be something else used as an anchor. And here I've got that set to be every 25 centimeters. So if I want to, let's say, go with 1 row or 2 rows per base unit there, we can just do the 0.75 divided by 2, and we've got 0.375, and we've got a wider spacing. And if we want to go with just 1 per layer, maybe it's a block wall with grid in between there, we can change that accordingly. Yeah, so that, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's in the description, it's describing the length there. It's dictated by the limits of your critical bill material. So that is that.
That's great. The next question that we got is, you can set the number of layers of fabric per road on the GRS wall?
So that kind of similar to the first question. It's dictated by the assigned spacing here. So we've got that set out whatever we'd like, and it's so we get the layers in between the basing units. Typically we do that in something that divides that neatly. So 0.25, 0.375, etc. If we want to have something right on the joint between those, rather than just saying how many per facing unit.
Okay. The next one that we have is, how do you get the quantity or volume of blocks needed in the project?
All right. So we could come down here, create a data table. And so I've got data tables with different unit volumes in them. So we could take, well, first step is to figure out what volumes we'd like to report. So in here we could say that we've got those blocks being counted as surface volume 12. So we could come in here and we could add in surface volume 12. Now this is giving us the volume, which isn't the same as your number of blocks. If you wanted to go with the number of blocks, we could. There'd be a little bit more work for that. One of those things, if you're doing the same type of project over and over again, we can build a custom attribute. We could go in here, we could create a new attribute, and it could be some kind of function based off of our other existing attributes. So that surface volume 12, and we could build a function based off the cross-section area to figure out the quantity. And then we'd have a length of those blocks that we have as well, and we could divide that by the length. We could get a number of block estimate. I won't click through that because I'd probably wouldn't enter it right the first time, but it isn't too bad. Just a matter of typing out, similar to typing a formula in Excel or what have you. With that too, I will mention, so I mentioned surface volume 12. These volumes, I can see my backfill is being tracked as surface volume 11. We could add in a layer for surface volume 11 as well to get that critical backfill that's going to require maybe a different gradation, more compaction effort. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Fantastic. The next one, it says, is your template showing removal and embed, oh sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this word, embedment depth in front of blocks? This should not be removed and not be included in cut volumes to build the wall?
All right, so the template is fairly flexible, and it depends how you use it. So let's just come in here. Templates. So I've got a ditch being applied here, where if I didn't want that removed, I could tell it not to. So I can cycle through and see that that's being removed by my ditch component. I think there's some cases where you might want that just from a drainage standpoint where you daylight that out. So we can remove that, and now that cut slope is going back at whatever we have. Now here also I've got a leveling course, so it's up to you where you put that offset. If you want that snug right up to the toe of your block, we can go down here and we've got our leveling course. Outside offset. And there we are. And here I guess I'm losing a little bit of material, so we can, I guess it doesn't want to be 0. But there it's set, so we've got that full leveling course on the bottom, ahead width or depth, and then keeping that to a minimum. And we can change that cut to be as steep as we'd like here as well. So if you just want to notch that out, go for it. And if you want to not have a leveling course, oh, there we are. So that's one reason why it is just it's not out there yet. We just found something that I'll need to fix. But we can set that to be very thin. Yeah, thin now, but it'll be 0 later. So we can get rid of that leveling course.
I think everybody is excited about the GRS. So the next question is, when will the GRS template be available on the eLibrary?
I don't know. I just I built the bulk of it last night or yesterday, and there's a couple things, as we just saw there, that needs to get ironed out before it gets put on the eLibrary, but it should be soon. So kind of a matter of days rather than weeks or anything like that.
Fantastic. And I think I'm going to go for the last 2 questions that are related to the first ones that we had. The fabric starts at the spacing interval up from the bottom block. I think this is regarding the first question for the GRS.
Oh, what was that?
I'm going to tell you again. Sorry, I lost it for 1 second. Yeah, it's a common practice, basically, from what you were saying, the first question. So, and the fabric starts at this spacing interval up from the bottom block, and then it continues, and the last layer is some portion of the interval down from the top layer. Yeah, that's those. Yeah.
Yeah, the spacing is set based off the spacing you assigned, and it's works up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We still have a few questions, but we are running out of time. So for those who just send us a few more questions, we are gonna reply to you by email. And I think that's it. This is a very exciting webinar today with so many new things. Thank you so much, Matt.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for watching and attending.
Thank you. And I will see you guys in the next webinar. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thanks everyone.